Welcome to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast, sponsored by Dominion Enterprise Services. I'm Catherine Tindall, CPA and founder of Dominion. We're a tax and accounting firm focused exclusively on serving advisors for their own tax planning and filing needs as business owners. At Dominion, we work alongside advisory firm owners to bring proactive strategy, clarity, and confidence to their tax planning so they can focus on growing their firms. The focus of this show is to cover different areas that I've experienced as a tax planner, working with advisor clients in their lives, building their practices. So let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. On today's episode, I have with me Joe Moss. He is a fractional industry troublemaker at Advisor Techbook. He writes a ton of useful content for the industry, compiles lists, has a newsletter, has a school community. There's just a lot of things that you have your fingers in, Joe. So I'm excited to have the conversation today. There's a lot of places that we can go kind of talking about tech, AI, growth, the things that you've been seeing firm owners struggle with and kind of what's on deck for some of the changes that you see in the industry currently.
Yeah, for sure.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about AI. I don't know if that's the best place for us to start. I know it's the hot topic of the day. And it seems like everything I see in all different places, it's, AI. What's been some of your experiences, kind of talking to people running firms and just experiencing the tools that are out there when it comes to, how AI is being implemented or not being implemented or misimplemented and things that you've been seeing?
Yeah, I would say advisors already had a shiny object syndrome problem with Advisor Tech before AI even existed. And I think AI has just
That's fair.
blown that through the roof. I would say try to use AI as little as possible in your own personal life and let AI be used by the people developing the software. Because I think the people that are making the software for financial advisors, they obviously need to be using AI and need to be putting AI in the software. But I think as human financial advice givers, we should try to use AI as little as possible and work on developing our brains and our relationships and our writing. And that's my opinion.
The spicy take. Because I think I've experienced, at least with AI on the professional side, I've actually had this happen a couple times where advisor clients would come to me with something like a strategy idea for the tax side or, something kind of technical. And they'd say, oh, this is what ChatGPT told me. And it's, riddled with errors. There was even a tax court case recently where an attorney tried to use, basically there were fake citations in his arguments that whatever AI he was using generated that seemed totally legitimate, but just totally hallucinated. So I've found, at least on a technical side, it's, it can help speed up things a little bit, but it's just, how can you sometimes, especially on technical issues, being able to trust an AI to actually think and be, really logical and not hallucinating. I've found that to be a challenge. And I guess one of my questions, when you've seen this with firm owners and, you say use it as little as possible. Have you found any good, easy use cases for it where there's been efficiencies, or kind of what's your experience been in terms of like any favorable usage for it?
I think specifically with picking like the core tech stack. So custodian, CRM, financial planning tool, data gathering, all of these tools, there's far better versions available just within the past year or last few years. So I would say, CRM, move off of Red Teller Wealth Box, move to Slant or Altitude, because AI is just built into everything. Whereas when you take like 10 or 20-year-old code and then slop AI on top of it, like you're just not going to get very good results.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth moving to really deeply integrated all-in-one or AI native CRMs, custodians, financial planning tools, data gathering tools. And that's where the huge time savings will be. I think where a lot of people are wasting time is in the content generation, in the writing, in the email drafting. Like I think if you just think about the foundation of AI, it's based on theft. So like humans have put words all over the internet, a lot of them copyrighted. AI has stolen enormous amounts of copyrighted material. So just think like the words that AI is built on is built off stolen words, and then think every time I use words that I didn't write to communicate, I'm basically lying to someone that and putting it off as if I said this when you didn't say it. The AI said it. So I think nobody's quite talking about it that strongly, but I think just the reality is if you write someone something and pretend like you wrote it and you didn't write it, I think you're lying to them. So don't do that.
And I guess when, in communications, at least what I've found is, sometimes I'll end up using it where it's like I'll record a Loom video or something like that and then just ask it to summarize it. And then I'll be sending the Loom video, and then underneath, it'll do like its little bullet point summary that, I always have to clean it up. Like it's never quite right or quite what I said, or it's missing some nuance or whatever it is. But at least in that instance, I've found it to be time efficient for me, with being able to just for documentation purposes, not really for like full communication purposes, right? Because my preference has always been, especially when it's a complex topic, if we can't talk together, having something like a Loom video where it's understandable makes a really big difference, for actually communicating well, instead of just, okay, here's 5 paragraphs of a technical subject or whatever it is. But so I guess, with firm owners that are thinking about, maybe making some tech stack changes and switching over to some AI native tools, what are the ones that you think are like the easiest low hanging fruit for them to consider? Or, maybe it's not low hanging fruit, but the value add or the return on that effort is really worth it from what you've seen, people making changes in the past like year or two as these tools become so much better.
Yeah. So if you think about like the accuracy of data, the most accurate data you have in your firm is custodian data. So the first switch I would make is add an AI native custodian. You don't have to move all your clients over to it, but like I would add Altruist and use Hazel and use the tax planning features. I think that's the first just like obvious thing to add. The second one would be CRM, move off of one of the legacy CRMs to an AI native CRM. And then I'm basically repeating myself from before, but like use a modern financial planning tool like Wavevest or Curdora, because you can just literally drop documents into it and it will auto build the financial plan for you, and then you can edit it and go forward. I think in almost all the core categories, there's like far better, like 3 to 5 times better tools available that are cheaper, faster, and better than the legacy stuff. So I think it's worth at this stage, like looking at each category and being like, what is better out there that I could use?
Yeah. And have you seen with people who have made the jump, better, transitions that like some results, from people's experiences, like, oh, this saved us, this was saving me like X number of admin hours per case, or, any like kind of anecdotal experiences you've seen from people that have made those jumps?
I mean, the AI note takers are all touting like, we'll save you 10 to 20 hours per week. And my joke is they'll save you 40 hours per week and they'll take your job from you too. I think the point is, I'm referencing like AI financial advisors. Like, sure, you can hire an AI financial advisor, but that's not the goal. I think what's really cool about AI is that it's allowing the things that actually have like deep lasting value bubble to the surface. And a lot of the things that were getting a lot of attention, the investment management, the financial planning, retirement planning, the specialized other planning categories, like AI is making those very easy, very cheap, like in a way almost destroying the value there, but adding the value back to the relationship, to the credibility, to the trust, and even like life transformation, which I think is pretty cool.
And so, like, outside of AI stuff, which is, the bigger trend, it's just like what everybody is talking about constantly. In terms of other tech things that are going on and changes, or when you see firm owners who are maybe on these like legacy clunky systems start to consider changing over to newer either AI systems or just like newer systems in general, like if they've got a cobbled together tech stack, what are some of the things that maybe they should be thinking about as part of that process, or when it's time to start reconsidering those things, from a practice perspective, like if you hit a certain number of team members or just, practice goals that you have, like what you've seen to be good frameworks. Avoiding shiny object syndrome, but also I see some people where they're like be dragging along on, I'll ask them what they use for something and it's like, wow, like I'm surprised that anybody's still using that. So where's the Goldilocks zone of, being able to have this function work well?
I think it all starts with very simple questions. What is your business goal? Like, how much money do you want to make? Who do you want to work with? What kind of results are you trying to help them achieve? How are you going to help them achieve those results? What kind of transformation are they going to experience from when they start working with you to when they finish working with you? Or if it's ongoing, like what is the transformation that you're helping them go through ongoingly? And then based on the answers to those questions, how many people you need to work with, how much you need to charge, what the deliverables need to be. And then you can kind of back your way into the technology that you need to do that. But I just think this whole AI opportunity is really big to like really think through what your business does and how can you make it a lot more fun for yourself, your team, and your clients. Because I think a lot of people are just really bored. And I think this is a great opportunity to like actually find where the real value is and help people in deep, meaningful ways.
Yeah, that's true. I guess when I talk to clients, it's some where they've basically built, exactly what they want. And it's, then we're trying to optimize for like time off and, reducing the number of hours that they're spending in the business.
Yeah.
And then I have others where, the real challenge that they've got is, they're just really burnt out. They're doing too many things. It's hard for them to delegate. It's hard for them to get themselves up out of the work. Catherine here. Just wanted to say thanks for tuning into the show and hope you've been enjoying it. Since we're all at the mercy of social media algorithms, if you wouldn't mind rating the podcast on whatever platform that you listen to, I'd really appreciate it. And also, if you're looking to stay in the loop on current tax updates, what the firm is working on, and just the things that I think you as a firm owner need to be aware of when it comes to the world of tax, you can sign up for our newsletter using the link below. I only send out editions when we have really useful things to share or things that I think are important to have your attention and energy on. So let's get back to the show, and thanks again for being a listener.
I actually just saw a podcast this morning by Mindy Diamond and Louis Diamond, and they were saying how many of their clients are successful but like not happy. They've reached their goals but they're just really discontent. And but I'm hearing this like, Olympians win the gold and they get depressed. Like people sell a company for hundreds of millions and they get depressed. An advisor was like, as soon as people retire, there's like a literal like retirement fade. That they get depressed because they don't have purpose. So like in all my goal setting now and how I talk to other people about it is like set your big, hairy, audacious goal, but always set a backup goal. So if your goal is like $1 million a year in revenue, set a backup goal that's an impact goal. Like I want to work with 100 households at 10K a year. And then your backup goal is like, I want to work with, 10,000 individuals at $9 a month or something, or $100 like swap it. So it goes from money, which you need and want, to impact. I think the other thing is just like training the next generation. I think a lot of advisors reach a point where they're happy, but they get a lot of excitement and joy out of like training the next generation of advisors.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that in a lot of the practices we work with where it's, once they, maybe it's just part of being a human being that we're just never satisfied, which is good. It keeps life spicy, right? Knowing that, okay, we set these goals and we hit them, but then on the other side of that, there's the next mountain, and if you just learn to enjoy the climbing, like, okay, great, I'll climb this first mountain, but then like, let's find the next one. And I think that suggestion that you have on, focusing on the second generation, speaking from a tax perspective as well, like when I'm involved in a lot of succession planning, or getting to know firms for the first time, it's a big first question that I have is, well, how do you initially Like, what do you think you're going to do to exit out of this practice eventually? It's something that most people, oftentimes I find that there's really no plan with it and not a lot of intentionality behind it. Sometimes I'll find firm owners where they're, I don't want to go PE. I'm not going to sell this to a stranger. And so when they get kind of later in career, getting that second generation developed up, getting them integrated, also like actually having them take over ownership slowly as, retirement, I say like retirement, but it's really just kind of phasing yourself down to the level where it's, you're happy to work. I would say most of the advisors I work with, they're not, I want to retire and then I'm just going to go play golf 7 days a week. Like they just want to get their participation and then also just the onus of, being responsible for everything off of their shoulders and maybe just stay in some of the relationships that they enjoy. I find most of them just want to go out in the saddle, which is, testament to how much you love your craft when that's the case.
No, I love that. PE is an interesting conversation. I mean, Kitces did some research and like the advisors that are the least happy are working at firms that are PE backed. And Ritholtz Wealth just like sold the company to its employees or set in motion, like a transition from the current ownership to the employees, which is really cool. And then I don't know if you follow Mr. Beast, but like he has a chocolate company and it's very important to him that like the chocolate is ethically sourced and they're not using child labor and stuff. And he's like, I can never sell this company because anyone that buys it will just like
immediately start doing that.
Right. Yeah. So it is interesting. And I think you can see it in the tech space and the AI space as well. Like if the only thing that matters is making more money, the product will suffer, the advisor experience will suffer. Like you almost want to work with tech companies that have a soul in a way. Like the founders are good people. It's not all just about making money.
Yeah. And I think it's, part of what swaps is, I have this conversation with a lot of advisors where, you have to be profitable. Like it's just, you have to make sure you're paying the bills and it's a mark of a good business that you're profitable, but that really should be the fruit of all the other things that are going on. The good client experience, the good, team integration, the good team support. It's really more of a fruit rather than, okay, we're going to do everything we can in order to, get this profit number up. And I find with most firms that we work with, when I talk to them about what's important to them and, what they're working on, it's the client relationships is what drives most of, what they're trying to do or their team and supporting their team. And, having that more long-term vision of what you're trying to do. Yes, on an annual level. And yes, just to be responsible and to have visibility, you need to be paying attention to your financials and everything. But the more I talk to people and kind of the way that it feels like the modern world is going, that meaning gap, that purpose gap, I think people are getting more tuned into that. And especially with a lot of these tools where, if you structure things right, you really can reduce how much labor is going into a lot of the things. It gives you more of that freedom to focus on those higher level, it's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for people who aren't familiar with it. You start with, safety, security, food, and then you go up to, relationships, and then, it just goes higher and higher levels. And then as you keep, it's like every mountain you go over to the next mountain. Like every time you ascend things and you go, through that advisor life phase of, you survive your first years out on your own if you go independent, or you're growing inside of a firm and you're rising through the ranks and just getting more established in the technical skill. And then you have to start learning more of these soft skills and then learning more of these management skills. And it's just a, very natural progression that people experience. But I guess, when you see people wanting to focus more on maybe those non-financial goals, and then especially as they're building their firms and having more of that, non-financial emphasis with what they're doing with their teams, et cetera. Have you seen some things on the tech side that have really helped, push this exponentially, or helped with some of this, like more, I would say like human side of things, like maybe more specifics, like scenarios you've seen?
Yeah. So like Rue Financial has a head of culture, and his job in the company is to like make sure the advisors are as happy as humanly possible. And in his tagline on LinkedIn, it literally is like, we're making our firm the best firm, in the world to work at. I think optimizing for human happiness, especially, we were talking about like optimizing for money. There's a lot of people right now that are just being like, if you're not optimizing for human flourishing, you're doing it wrong. Like,
Yeah.
These firms that are laying off thousands of employees, or not firms or tech companies, like, I think you can actually make more money when you optimize for human happiness and flourishing than when you optimize for the bottom line. And I think that's the secret. That like some of the fastest growing firms are like 100% focused on people and not the technology, not the AI, not the products. They're focused on, let's make our advisors as happy as possible, working with clients they really want to work with. And it just, that trickle down effect of joy basically just happens.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned him, because I was actually looking at his page earlier today for something that he posted. And it's funny too, because like when you say human flourishing, like, at my firm, that's our second core value,
Okay.
Besides like, excellence and long-term vision. But it's because I've seen a lot of the same things where it's, if we're going to be doing this for the majority of our lives, it's like, unless you really love it and there's this sense of, duty and relationship to the other people that you're there with, it's like, why bother, right? It's like, you could do anything that you want with your life, but if it at the end of the day, like, you haven't built something that's going to outlast you or really spread goodness into the world, it's like, are you really going to be happy? And then what's it all for? But I was a philosophy major back in the day, so a lot of this probably comes from that.
That's good. I think that's where the industry's headed. I mean, honestly, as AI takes over a lot of the technical details, and just does them faster, I think that a lot of it's going to be about psychology, philosophy, happiness, life. Like, when you're looking back on your life, like from your deathbed or something, like, what are you wanting to have achieved? I think these kinds of conversations are super helpful.
Yeah, well, that took a real turn from technology to very left brain, right brain. But I think it's a fruit of it, right? Like, the more that these things get better, I look at my own industry, the things that people were having to do in my industry, like in the 80s versus now. It's a completely different environment. You would be surprised. Well, talking to the IRS, it's not a different environment, but, running a firm and like the level of technical detail and what goes on in the work, it's just really freed us up to, be human beings, focus on more valuable things, focus on higher level thinking, being more strategic, doing things with a more long-term attitude and, better relationships. And so it's, it makes a huge difference. I'm always happy that, we're in the world that we are in today and not having to do this, 50 years ago. But it's interesting to see kind of where things will break in terms of, how firm culture changes and who's going to be, advancing and, even things like a lot of the conversation around people wanting to go independent. Like, I've seen a lot of changes on that side as well. It's an interesting environment that we're in. So for firm owners that are, if there's just one or two things that they could take away for practical things that you think that they should be looking at, what are some quick practical things that maybe they should, check out as part of this, conversation?
Yeah, there's kind of two things for technology. Just go with AI native tools over legacy tools. So just look at each tool in your stack and make sure that it's a tool that's like deeply integrated. It's more fun to use. It looks better. It's, your staff will be happier. It just feels magical when you use like truly integrated tech. And the other one was around organic growth. I think building a personal brand is the most powerful way to grow organically. Which, a niche video podcast is a fantastic way to grow a personal brand. And I think the reason I'm coming out so strongly about this is there's just a lot of like AI prospecting slop, and a lot of firms like saying you can send emails written by AI to thousands of prospects and you can land prospects that way. It's like, no, that's actually bad for your brand and your trust and your domain credibility. So like, don't do that. Those two things, building personal brands and then using like modern AI integrated tech.
Yeah, no, those are great feedback. And it's, we're just in a different age. And I think a lot of that, mass market, like AI slop kind of, it's not going to work with modern, I think people are getting adjusted pretty quickly to being able to sense when they're being, spammed versus, okay, I'm actually getting valuable content out of this. This is addressed to me, it just takes a lot more thought work. But for advisors that are interested in learning more about what you do, what's the best way for them to kind of get into your world, Joe?
I hang out on LinkedIn far too much, so you can look me up on LinkedIn. Joe Moss with the fire and rocket emoji at the end of my name. AdvisorTechbook.com is my main website.
Awesome. So we'll post those links nearby wherever you're listening to this. And any final thoughts, Joe, before we sign off?
A lot of these things come down to common sense. I mean, I like to say the golden rule of AI adoption, which is don't use AI in ways you don't want used AI against you. So like, don't prospect people in ways you don't want to be prospected. So it's just, caring about other people, common sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Use your brain. Your brain is the best piece of technology you will ever have.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast, again, sponsored by Dominion Enterprise Services. If you found this episode valuable, I would love to personally hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message. I'm always interested in your feedback, future episode ideas, or questions you'd like to see covered in a future episode of the show. And be sure to subscribe to our monthly tax update newsletter, where we share timely tax insights and planning considerations specifically crafted for advisory firm owners and what we share to our own clients. We'll see you next time.